Metalheads, welcome to Grafikmetal, where rock and metal is celebrated with design in mind. I'm Vito Von Wright, your host, and this is Heavy Metal Bowl 60 Halftime Show. This is going to be the announcement of the nominees for the bands for this year's halftime performance, heavy metal style. This is an annual tradition where we, during the Super Bowl, week, so to speak, we like to basically nix what they always choose, the NFL always chooses in the host cities, and we like to bring the heaviness to all of you. So, the game version, where we select the members and they go head-to-head in the game, that will be coming up next. But this, we're focusing on the halftime show, which is a really, really big deal. Billions of views every single year across the entire world. But like it's always been, heavy music is always snubbed. This is yet another painful one because just like the 50th, this now being the 60th, host city, Bay Area, it should be Metallica. But they've been snubbed for 35 years, and if they haven't, you know that no one else has. So we select the best nominees for all you to choose. We'll give our personal opinion as far as who we would choose for the show. But this is ultimately your opportunity to vote. Once the votes come in, we'll lock it, and then we'll create a halftime show during the actual halftime for you to be able to enjoy and appreciate what it would be like if heavy music was supported, as the NFL and all the players would love to see happen, right? They go hand in hand. It always has. Every game you go to, what do you always hear? More often than not, it's heavy music. So, anyways, let's jump to it. So, Metallica, though, once again, will be snubbed on our list. Why? Because, so here are the requirements, okay? Obviously, it has to be a heavy metal band, right? And at some adjacent level, this is all about heavy music, right? Other thing is that they have to be very relevant and have released a new album either in the year 2025, just like the NFL season, right? The two teams that play against each other is from the 2025 season. So it has to be that they have to be very newly relevant with new music, touring right now. It has to be, they have to be live and in action right now. The exception can be coming into now 2026, the beginning here part. That's the other, because the game hasn't even happened yet, right? So that's the other bandwidth there. The other thing is that there are boosting opportunities within three specific cities and areas where they're from. Obviously, the host city being the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So that's one, since they're the host city for Super Bowl 60. Then there are the two teams, the representatives in the game. So you got the Seattle Seahawks, Washington, Seattle, and then you have the New England Patriots, so Boston, Massachusetts area. So if there's a band that's in that represents any of those three, they get leveled up. All right, let's jump to it. One other last key part. So the Super Bowl is 15 minutes allowed. It's technically 30 minutes in as far as its whole spiel, but they allot 15 minutes for whatever acts are performing during the halftime show. So because of this, we like to keep that in true, and therefore 5 bands are the options. So we group it into 5 different buckets, right? You have the headliner, right? The most well-known bands that you can have in heavy music. Obviously, they're not going to be as big as Metallica, but as best as we can go with heavy metal. Then it goes to headliner number 2 on down to supporting act number 5. So you have 5 groupings within, and we'll give a few nominees options for you to work with within each of them. So we'll start with supporter group number 5. So here are some options. So we could go with a Celestial Wizard, right? Brand newish kind of band. They represent a more traditional type style of metal, but they fuse it with like a modern, like melodic death. So they could be a good option if we want to bring some energy, some traditional, but some flex with some heavier kind of style. And the singer in particular has a lot of range and a lot of capability to be able to hit low baritone and high octave kind of level of singing. So that could be a good option. We have Dragon Knight if we want to bring some power metal. Power metal obviously could bring still more tradition, but you're gonna, in this case, Dragon Knight makes sense because they bring, this is entertainment, right? I think that was the other big key part to mention. This is a good segue real quick. So another big requirement is that we're focusing on entertaining bands, right? It's not just about the music. When you're voting, don't just think subjectively the bands you like because the music. That's not what this is about. The halftime show is way more than that, right? This is a performance. This is highly engaging, highly entertaining. Think big bombastic stage presence, costumes, the whole 9 yards. That is very, very in production and so forth. In range and capability, and then flex as far as being able to have, accessible songs, but also heavy songs, well-known songs, a mix. It has to be, you have to think about, the global essence of this performance. So that's a key part. This leads back to then Dragon Knight. So Dragon Knight, they bring costumes, they bring an aesthetic, right, and a style. So they also bring a lot of technical capability. So Dragon Knight could be a solid option. You got Doomsday. Doomsday fits and gets elevated, even though they're a brand new band, because they're from Oakland, Bay Area. They are a crossover between thrash, groove, hardcore. High octane, a lot of energy, a lot of pizzazz. They're young, they're enthusiastic, they bring a lot of riffage and a lot of breakdown, so there's a lot of headbanging opportunity with them. You got the Toxars going a completely different direction. They are a punk band, but they go everywhere. Similar to another band we'll get to coming up later, this band can do it all. They have complete range, every kind of style imaginable they can do. They bring a little bit more humor and comedic nature. They are also, without question, one of the best live acts in the world right now. They are crazy, insane, think Mr. Bungle, type, like Mike Patton kind of representation here. So if we want to go something more avant and insane, basically, this would be a good fit, and to bring some punk energy. We didn't want to focus too much punk this time around this year because it just happens to be that Green Day actually is going to be happening. So wanted to spend a little bit more time in the other subgenres. We could go with band Soulblind. Soulblind fits the bill because, they're from, technically, they're actually from New York. But they fit perfectly because they represent grunge. They're a heavier version of grunge. But what better option to have one of the band represents, the subgenre of grunge that is literally the holy grail of representation of Seattle, Washington, and the 90s, and therefore the Seattle Seahawks. And then, last but not least, is Creeper. They're a kind of a hybrid band. They used to be punk. Now they're more of a traditional heavy band. Now they've been doing rock operas. They bring so they're like adjacent to a Ghost, right? They bring they focus a little more vampire kind of look and makeup, and they bring an aesthetic. They're British. They have they are great live. They bring a lot of operatic bombastic nature to it, and their songs really would fit perfectly. But with that said, we would choose Soulblind because you can't resist bringing the grunge to this halftime show because of the reasons mentioned of the Seattle Seahawks and the aligning factors there. Plus, they're pretty solid. They're killing it right now. Brand new, but really exciting. All right, now let's move on to supporting act number 4. So, a little bit more known, right? So you could go with a heavy approach. So we could bring in some Hooded Menace, who are on absolute tear right now. They can't do anything wrong. They've been just knocking every album out of the park. They're also a fusion band. They bring some melodic death, just a raw, intense, more of the heavier, darker side, plus, some hoodies, which ironically fits the Bay Area perfectly because if you didn't know, the techie world has taken over the scene here, and what do they always wear? Hoodies. We got 1914. Some politicalness to the mix, right? Since they're from Ukraine, obviously, a heavy topic right now. So they could fit that bill. Plus, they bring the aesthetic, right? They got the costumes, they got the style, they got the look, and of course, most importantly, they represent death. In a perfect world, we would go with Blood Incantation, but we can't because of the rules applied since, they're all, Absolute Elsewhere is 2024, right? So, can't do them. So the next best option would be like a 1914. They're also good because they can represent death and black and kind of the fusion there, plus the storytelling and the theatrical nature, if there ever was for an extreme metal band, they could be a good fit. You go with Spirit World. Spirit World is, they bring, world elements, and more of the scale, right, of the diversification of, the scene of right representation of globalness. They could fit that bill because they bring the kind of like the Spanish, Mexican, Western kind of like fusion of otherwise thrash. So they got known for, kind of being a kind of copy clone riffage of like a Slayer, right? So, but, they bring, some of the thrashiness to it, but a little bit more of fusion. They have the aesthetic too. They wear costumes as well. So they could be a potential option. You got Castle Rat, right? One of the more, popular bands that are brand new that are just kind of boom, taken off. Mostly because they're aesthetic, which is exactly the reason why they could be an excellent, excellent fit. Plus, there's some femininity. We got to bring in some femininity at some point, so they could be a good option there. Obviously, she is, she comes with a lot, to the table, right? The fashion, although technically she may get banned, they may cancel her because of her outfit or alone. But they, their costumes, their aesthetic, they also represent the doom and the tradition, old school, kind of style, which could be very fitting for obvious reasons. You go another direction and go with Igor, right? Also killing it these days. Now you got a lot of fusion. It can go like industrial. You can go a lot of industrial, some black, some extreme, the avant-garde. So there's a lot of versatility of going with an Igor because of the different kind of fusion of styles, especially the drumming and the insane, Degentian kind of like more modern style riffage. So that could be a good option. Illuvietti. Again, some femininity and then some scale as far as instruments, global instruments, because what better option than a band that has 30 different instruments that they work with and all sorts of old school Oriental kind of, Celtic, style instruments. So they could be a good option. Again, femininity would be valuable too, since there's like 2 or 3 different times of options there to bring some of that. They're pretty solid live. I mean, obviously they're a little bit more extreme, although they have actually the versatility of extreme and accessibility. So they're actually a pretty good fit because of that reason too. They do have some very well-known songs as well. Completely different direction, but could fit because representation of the Brooklyn, New York, and therefore the Boston, New England Patriots, Biohazard. And I'll throw in a new band in Gridiron, which is the real reason why I wanted to introduce this grouping, because you could bring both of them, the old school and the new school. But Gridiron, the nickname for the NFL, for football, right? So they obviously are a logical fit for their reason. Plus you bring the attitude, the toughness, the street cred, some of the more hip hop, fusion into the metal. So that could be cool. Plus the old and the new factor. So they could be interesting. But we're actually going to go with a different band than been listed. We're going to go with Die Spitz. Why? We talked about it. We need to at some point bring some femininity. Well, what better than one of the hottest new bands right now that's an all female member band, so 4 of them. They are enthusiastic. They are bombastic. They are high octane. They're intense. They bring an intense attitude. They're not just like, cute little, girls. They got attitude. They got spunk. They got the vibe, the style. Plus, they got versatility. They can fuse punk, hardcore, doom, traditional metal, extreme metal. She's the singing in particular. They can bring death vocals with perfection as well. So they got full range and can bring different kind of styles of representation. Plus, most importantly, we got our femininity taken care of. So I would go with Die Spitz for that reason. Moving on to support act or headliner number 3. Again, we're moving up a little bit. So we just mentioned, bringing in some femininity. But if you didn't go with Die Spitz, another option would be like a Hailstorm, right? Because of the popularity and the range, Lizzie is obviously can handle anything as far as vocal capabilities. Plus, there's the coolness of the fact that she can play the guitar at the same time. So there's the style that comes with it, also a little more fashion and enthusiastic, But it's really the versatility that Hailstorm offers could be an option. You could go with, so similar to like Igor, if we wanted to bring some industrial metal into the mix, what better than the best industrial band right now today in Health? Absolutely slaying it. They can't do anything wrong as well. It's growing in popularity as well. You bring a lot of production, the electronic, industrial kind of style, plus the fusion of the guitars. They got range as well. They have been known to be able to work so well with virtually any band imaginable. So they are an excellent fit. Lorna Shore. Right? If we want to go back to extreme, bring an extreme band that's really hot right now, very popular, very intense. I don't know if they're necessarily the absolute best as far as fitting the halftime show, since they keep things very simple. We are going to get a lot of fire, but you pretty much are going to get stylistically wise, the music does fit because of the scale, the bombasticness, the symphonic now level that they've gotten, the very, very loud and over the top. So they do fit that part, but that's about it. They don't have exactly the best live kind of aesthetic, but nonetheless. Shadow of Intent would be the other option, right? Heavier in a different direction. Either of them could work. I mean, technically, what Lorna Shore is slightly more popular right now, but it's not like Shadow of Intent is that far off. So they either could work pretty darn well if we want to go an extreme metal approach. But with that said, how can you not choose the elephant in the room? The band that literally can do anything. Kind of similar to we mentioned the Health can fit with anybody. Well, these guys can fit with anything. They can do anything. There's literally no limitation. We're talking about King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. I mean, what? How could you not pick the band that literally can do extreme metal to accessibility and everything in between? You want some jazz, you want funk, you want alternative, you want extra thrash, you want death, you want, what do you want, right? They also bring the enthusiastic live. They are one of the best live acts that you can possibly see. And then most importantly, we got to bring, again, some international flair into it. So up to this point, we haven't really done that too much. So we got to make sure that, so in this case, Australians taking, accounted for, so, and just that representation. So I think that that's a logical fit to go with. All right, moving on. Second headline. All right. So we could have some fun. Yeah, okay? So hear me out. Okay, even though they're not a great fit due to the timing and the old age that comes with. But, Sepultura reuniting. I mean, you want to talk about bringing excitement into the mix. Can you imagine? I mean, that's one of the ultimate dream fantasies, is seeing, Sepultura reunite and play. I mean, unfortunately, Max, yes, studio-wise and bringing back, some of the old, Sepultura was amazing. But let's be honest, not like he has handled his health very, very well. So, the Cavalieras and Andreas and so forth, it's not like they're the perfect fit for right now, but how cool from a thematic and an excitement and just an idea standpoint. What better than to go with, you could even fuse then Sepultura, Soulfly, and bring in a whole fusion of, got that also the tribal. One of the coolest things would be like, how about this? The compromise would be is that their job would be to do like an intermission tribal instrumentation bit. How cool would that be? Do one of the many Soulfly, songs that they've done instrumental, like tribal things. That would be badass. Okay, we want to bring some technicality. Otherwise, what better than Dream Theater? And you can also throw them in and bring the son and the father together and bring Tala as well, because then now you have the youth and the old coming together and that fusion of styles. But that you would be choosing this option because of technicality alone, right? Not exactly the best live per se, as far as, again, for this purpose. But as far as technicality goes, what better option than this? You could otherwise just bring in, say, like a John just for that sake, or somebody in Mike, right? The other reason why it makes sense to, I wouldn't have necessarily considered Dream Theater, but it just happens to be that now that since Mike is back into the fold with the band, celebrating their 40th and whatnot, it made sense to potentially consider them. Talk about relevant right now.
Megadeth.
Right? I mean, obviously it has to be an option, right? Again, never really been a big fan of Megadeth from a live standpoint, but they are a big band. They represent thrash. Now, they are not from the Bay Area, technically, so they're going to get, docked for that in our perspective. But, Dave brings that political, views, obviously gets checked out. You can get Vic Rattlehead, right? So that's about the other perk, right? If we went with
Megadeth.
Otherwise, it would be cool to bring, like a Godsmack, but unfortunately that's not an option because, right, they didn't release new music or anything like that. But I think they're from the East Coast. Are they from Boston? They might be from Boston. So they would have actually potentially, but we can't go with that. So what we are going to go with, we are going to stick with thrash. The Bay Area, right? Testament, right? The most overlooked of the big thrash bands, and I think that they deserve respect, and I think that they are the perfect representation here because of, like we mentioned, from the Bay Area. They also have the other key element, and that is that if we're not choosing one of the extreme bands, so that's the reason why Testament gets elevated. Because what is Testament in a nutshell? What is their one greatest skill? The ability to go traditional, but also extreme. Fuse thrash with death. Particularly Chuck, right? Chuck is going to be a critical aspect because his vocal range, especially the darker side and the heavier side of death and whatnot, is going to be very, very important. Plus, they have some great songs that would work really, really well. And it's not like you're taking a notch, down as far as technical capabilities, Alex and so forth. There's a lot of technical capability that they bring to the table, and they can bring, they can do all the solos and so forth. So there's a lot that comes with them, not just the fact that they're from the Bay Area. All right, now let's go with the headliners. The freaking headliners. All right, so relevant modern times, if we want to go new, right, then obviously you gotta choose Sleep Token. There's no bigger band from a new standpoint than them. Obviously, aesthetically, they bring that to the teeth, right? The costumes and the style, the masks and just the aestheticness. They are bringing some of the choir now into the mix now more recently. So like you have the operatic and the bigger, larger lifestyle. Obviously, there's the fusion of hip hop. So there's a relevancy of today. So they're a logical potential option. There is 9 Inch Nails, right? Again, older, right? But obviously, what you're gonna get here is you're going to get, you know, the larger than life production, the light show, and the style, the big picture from the show standpoint, because Trent Atticus can really be almost like the ringleaders there. That's the other thing with choosing the headliner. Think of, you know, artists that really can represent, be the leader. Because remember, you have to fuse all of the bands together, and you have to think about the big picture of the show. So some of these, you know, like, you know, legends as far as from a production standpoint, they're going to be very valuable. So Trent Atticus and Nine Inch Nails could be a good fit. Plus, I mean, who wouldn't want to hear Closer, you know, play live amongst billions of people? I don't know about you, but I would. I mean, that would be amazing. Reptile as well, and so forth. All right. Deftones. Now, here's the thing. So technically they're Sacramento, so they're not really representing the Bay Area. Plus, as great as Deftones is, and they're, you know, still killing it, their most recent album has done really well, and they're very popular. One of the probably arguably the most popular of the options as far as headliners. But what do you get with them live? Yeah, you get the screaming, you get some intensity, but they pretty are straightforward. There's not really much to Deftones. That's their charm, but as far as for this purpose, I don't know if they're the best fit, but they're still a good option. Ghost, right? Obviously, one of the strongest possible options. In fact, it just kind of like not even thinking too hard. They're like an obvious, you know, choice because, you know, obviously Tobias checks off the leader, you know, standpoint of being able to produce the whole thing. You have the larger than life personality, the character with it. You have some iconic now songs. I mean, Mary on the Cross is probably like the most well-known of heavy-ish, even though it's not only a heavy even song, but, you know, that's the only knock on Ghost, is that sometimes they're not always heavy, but that's also why they are a good fit, because they bring a lot more of the, you know, accessible nature to it, the sing-along, you know, like uniting billions of people, right? What better than them? And of course, the style, the costumes, you know, the larger-than-life, you know, atmosphere would be taken care of with Ghost. But we're going to go slightly different direction, even though fits for the exact same reason, and that is Rob Zombie. We'll throw in even Power Man 5000 for shits and giggles, right? But here we go. So Boston, right? Massachusetts representation, therefore the New England Patriots. So now we got the New England Patriots, and then back with Soul Blind for Seattle Seahawks, and we have Testament for the Bay Area. So we have the three accounted for. So that's the reason why Rob gets elevated slightly. There's also the fact that you could add another level. You could tease and get people excited, just like I mentioned with the reuniting of Sepultura. In this case, you could reunite White Zombie, right? How incredible would that be? I'm drawing a blank on her name, the bassist, one of the most iconic, you know, bassists. I mean, just that alone, seeing her, you know, back in the band and to the fold would be incredible. Right, so that would be another amazing opportunity. Plus, you know, Rob takes care of the leader element. He can produce the whole thing. He can bring an entire story. Obviously, it's going to be a little more of a horror approach. That's not a bad thing, though, right? You know, some bring in the devils and monsters and you know, galore, the big, you know, statues and, you know, animatronics and I'm probably not saying that right. You'll probably tell me. Animatronics. I'm gonna stop, but you get the point. It bring also the attitude. Rob is also, you know, made the best out of the music. You know, the Zombies don't have the most well-known of songs, but they bring the attitude and the energy, the intensity, and the live nature. Plus, you got how many other bands and songs to work with. So I think from the big picture standpoint, this is an excellent, excellent fit. So you got, again, our pick, Rob Zombie. You got, let's see, Testament. You got King Gizzard. You got Die Spitz and Soul Blind. So that would be our you know, heavy metal bull 60 performance show. But now it's up to you. We want to hear from you. You got to vote on each grouping. Remember, the way this works is you pick one in each bucket, from the headliner on down to the supporting act, and you pick, so you ultimately are going to end up with 5. So we're going to take the best votes in each of them, and that completes then the show. And then we'll do like a fun video and then release it during the exact moment that the halftime is going on, so this way you can watch that instead of the BS that they put on with the actual NFL performance. What is it, Bad Bunny this time around? Anyways. So remember, think about the big picture. This is an highly engaging, entertaining, big deal, right? So entertainment, remember the cities, Seattle, Boston, Massachusetts, and the Bay Area is important to factor in, and just have some fun with it. Let's see what you got. Remember, the game is the game version, so we're going to select members and we're going to clash them head to head in a 1v1 matchup kind of battle, right? That's going to be the next episode. You also have the opportunity to vote on that as well, so stay tuned. Until then, I'm Veer Von Wright. You've been watching Grafikmetal. Cheers and keep on rocking.